It's February, I think February the 10th or something like that. It's a blustery, cold, damp winter day. But I thought we'd come out for a little walk in the woods and see what we can find to forage today. I'm looking for one thing in particular, but I don't know if we'll find it. Despite the cold, signs of spring are everywhere. This is a hazel tree and these are the catkins. We might, if we do, yeah, just see a little puff of pollen there coming off of them. These are the male reproductive parts of the hazel plant. Somewhere there will be some smaller female catkins that receive that pollen and then produce hazelnuts. These are the seeds on the burst open seed pods of a wild iris called Stinking Gladwin. I've never really found it to stink, to be honest, and I don't think it deserves that name. The flowers have a kind of slightly sickly smell to them. The flowers are really quite interesting for flowers because they're kind of purplish brownish colour and quite understated. And this is what I came here looking for today, Scarlet Elf Cup. This is a fungus I've seen quite a few times before, but I didn't know that was edible, but apparently it is. I actually came off the track here for something else. I've seen some wood ears down there on the elder tree. But I'm going to have a little rummage around here in amongst this mossy bit and see if I can find some more Scarlet Elf Cups. I won't pick that one just yet. I'll wait and see if I can find some more. But anyway, yeah, my purpose for leaving the track was to get down here because a rather fine little cluster of wood ears there on this dead elder branch here. So we will definitely have those. And I'll have a little look around and see if I can find some more Scarlet Elf Cup. We're not quite in the right kind of woodland for it really. This is mostly coniferous, this is pine trees. So what I really want is a deciduous wood with some dead stuff and moss lying around. So we'll try and find that. There are some different sections. You can see some more wood ear down there. So I shan't pick it all. I shall take some of it and we'll have some of that for our dinner this evening. Another dead or dying elder tree here with an abundance of these wood ears on it. Really nice ones as well. Look how nice and fresh those are. That's because we've had some really damp weather. So there's plenty of it here, which means I'm quite happy to pick a bag full of this here. I will leave some. I'm not going to go back and get that little Scarlet Elf Cup. I'm very curious to try them, but I'm not going to pick them when it's the only one there. These, on the other hand, are in great abundance, and actually they're really common anyway. And I'm sure there are some more that I can't even see or haven't even got the reach to get to. So anyway, we'll pick a few of these. And in case you're wondering why I sound slightly out of breath, we have been trekking up and down hills here for about an hour or so to probably make this 5 minutes of video so far. So someone always asks, but anyway, it looks like we might need to head for home now because that looks kind of a bit weathery over there. Another really good thing to forage in February is this. This is crow garlic, Allium vineale, and it looks a lot like chives because it's related to chives. It's an onion or garlic species, native to the UK, I think. Very invasive. You get this in your garden, you might regret it. It's commonly found on roadsides, although I don't recommend you pick it from a roadside because of pollution from traffic. But when you find it, you often find a lot of it. This is not from a roadside. I'm picking this in a grassed area in a park. So anyway, going to pick a load of this because it's really, really tasty. And at this time of year, it's got these, the leaves are still nice and tender, and a bit later on they tend to go a little bit coarse, but at this time of year it's really, really nice and tender, very, very tasty. We'll talk a bit more about the flavour when we get it home. There is one thing to be careful of though, is that it sprouts up at the same time as a lot of other spring bulbs. So these are daffodils here. These will harm you, possibly kill you if you eat them. Snowdrops again in the back there, poisonous again. So a lot of spring bulbs coming up at this time of year. This is bluebells here. So you need to be very judicious about what you pick, but crow garlic is helpful in that regard because, well, it has the leaves are tubular, like chives. They are a little green tube, and when you roll them between your fingers like that, they've got a kind of ridged feeling to them, which helps to identify it. One of the easiest ways to identify this obviously is the aroma. When you pick a load of that, it will have a strong onion garlic aroma. We'll talk more about that later on. Anyway, I'm going to pick a load of this because it's really good. So I've got my crow garlic. The flavour of crow garlic is going to take some explaining. It's a member of the same genus as leeks and garlic and onions and shallots. That is to say allium. So it is an onion or garlic or whatever you want to call it. But the flavour. So the flavour, if you think about how garlic is different from onions, but you still know you're eating something similar, crow garlic is as different from both garlic and onions as those things are from each other, if that makes sense. The flavour is oniony but really punchy without being harsh. So it's got this really deep savoury flavour, I think, that's almost, sometimes I think, is a little bit kind of meaty almost. Anyway, I need to wash this, and obviously I'm not going to eat all of this today. So I'm going to wash this, trim off, there's some kind of yellowed ends there, some dead bits and so on. And I'm going to preserve some of it by freezing it. So my big old bunch of crow garlic, which I've washed and pulled all the little brown bits off and just cleaned up a little bit. Now, the downside of this plant, if there is a downside, is that it's not around for very long. So these lovely, fresh, tender leaves won't be around for long. By the end of spring, they will have turned to kind of really tough, straw-like stuff that you wouldn't want to eat. At that point, the plant does start producing bulbils at the top of the stalk, which is another thing you can eat. And they're very good. I've had them before. In fact, I'll link to the video up in this card and in the description. So I want to preserve some of this so that I can enjoy it for a little bit longer than its natural season. So all I'm going to do is chop it up like you would do with chives, which it resembles a lot. Let's just go. Yeah, so there's just a different onioniness to it. I don't know how else to describe it. But anyway, I'm going to chop these up into little short, like 4 to 5 millimetre sections. I'll reserve a little bit of this because we are going to cook something with this today. The rest of this, I'm just going to put that in a box, in a plastic box, and that can go in the freezer straight as it is. It doesn't need blanching or anything. And it will freeze really quickly, and then it can be actually broken up and used loose and sprinkled directly into whatever you want to use it in. Soups, stews, omelettes, rice dishes. It's really very versatile, and hopefully you'll see this ingredient reappear in future videos. Made a bit of a mess, but anyway, there it is. So this little bowl of fresh crow garlic, what are we going to do with it? Well, it would have actually been ideal to put in the pasta dish, which you're going to see me make towards the end of this video. However, although that's in the future of this video, that was yesterday for me, and I didn't have this crow garlic to hand. We're just experiencing time in a non-linear fashion. Anyway, I'm just going to cook some ramen noodles, I think, and have this as part of that. I think I've got some leftover roast carrot. Yeah, I think we'll just make a dish of noodles, and this can be the garnish and flavouring. So my noodles are cooking over there somewhere. I do have this leftover roast carrot. This box of chicken is going to be confusing as well, because when you see this later, it's got more chicken in it. Again, non-linear time. Don't worry about it. And I think with this, I'm just going to cut it into little diagonal slices like that. And this I will just toss in with the noodles when they're just coming to the point of being cooked, just to warm through. Right, so there we go, noodles. I'm just going to drain some of the liquid off of here. And then a good amount of my crow garlic is going to go in there to sort of dress that. And then there's just one more thing, which you might be able to hear. Right, and so the last sort of finishing touch. A nice egg with a runny yolk. I'll tell you what, actually no, that's not the finishing touch, this is. Right, let's dig in and see what this is like. There we go. It's just really difficult to describe what it is that this crow garlic does. But like I say, it's really punchy, but at the same time, it's not harsh at all. It's just really present. That's good. Right, well, anyway, on with the show. So these wood ear mushrooms, and hopefully you can really see why that's called wood ear. It kind of does look like an ear, doesn't it? I don't normally wash wild mushrooms. People keep telling me I should. But I'm going to wash these because they've got no gills, they've got no pores, and they've got no sort of absorbent structures to go all soggy and wet. And to be honest, they are kind of soggy and wet by nature. That's just how they are. But you can see there's bits of tree and bark and stuff attached to them. And the easiest way to get that off is washing. Soaking them in water will actually plump them up a little bit. These take very well to drying. If you just leave them on a wire rack in an airy place, they will dehydrate themselves quite naturally. And then they keep for ages. And you can just rehydrate them by dropping them in water like I'm doing here. And they'll plump back up to something almost back to this size again. Anyway, I'm just going to actually pull off the bits of bark and moss that are attached. But yeah, a lot of people, you know, if you want to wash mushrooms, then go ahead and wash them. A lot of people keep telling me that I should with wild mushrooms. I'm not that worried about eating a little bit of soft dirt or whatever. And since I'm cooking mushrooms generally, any contamination from, you know, animals or bacteria or anything like that is going to get destroyed by the cooking. So that's not really a problem. There are people who supposedly tested whether washing mushrooms does make them absorb water, and they say it doesn't. But I don't think they're really talking about the kind of wild mushrooms that I often pick. Certainly, before now, I've picked wild oyster mushrooms, and it happened to be raining, so I had no choice but to pick them in pouring rain. So the oyster mushrooms were very wet, you know, like they would be if you immersed them in water to wash them. And when I was preparing them, I was able to wring moisture out of them. So it's not true that mushrooms don't absorb water. It may be true that you can get away with washing something like white button mushrooms in water when they're whole, when they're closed caps. But I'm not a great fan of white button mushrooms anyway. I'll take them if there's nothing else. But I have jokingly referred to white mini button mushrooms in the past as mushrooms for people who don't like mushrooms. Yeah, so anyway, you can see that was worth washing those. There's some bits of forest that's come off of there in that water. So I'll probably actually drain these in a colander and maybe run them under the tap and then let them dry out. So that was worth doing. I could have just carefully sponged that off if I wanted to, but with these, it doesn't matter if they get wet. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just explaining what I do, which is a preference I've arrived at after no small amount of experimentation and thinking about it. Now, since we're doing a wild mushroom thing, let's do a wild mushroom thing. So these are my wild, I think that's mostly porcini, that is Cep, penny bun, Boletus edulis mushrooms in there. I picked these year before last and dehydrated them. And I'm going to put some of these in there for a bit more of a kind of deep mushroomy flavour. These have got amazing depth of flavour. If you have mushroom soup somewhere in a restaurant, something like that, and you're wowed by the amount of mushroom flavour it has, chances are it's got some of this in there. Now, the normal procedure would be to hydrate those with water and then use the water as stock in the recipe I want to make. Except the thing I want to make today isn't going to have any water added to it, but it is going to have milk added. So I don't know whether this is going to work. I'm going to try rehydrating these mushrooms in milk. The milk is mostly water, so it kind of ought to work, but I don't know whether the fats and other things in that milk will interfere with the rehydration of those mushrooms. We'll find out. Experiments. So these lovely wood ear mushrooms, normally I would put these in a stir fry, but I think what we're going to do is put them with some pasta, because I've got some leftover chicken that needs to be used up. So this is not from my budget challenge, but the same kind of idea. So this is chicken from chicken thigh and drumstick, so it's some chicken leg portions. So I'm going to cook a chicken pasta dish, I think. So we'll start at the beginning. I'm going to have about half of this onion Shallot would be no doubt more appropriate than onion, but onion's what I got. I've got some egg pasta that I made earlier. Just kind of cut it into very rustic ribbons. Not sure what this would be called if it was a formal name for pasta, but perhaps somebody can tell me. We will also have a clove of garlic. This is winter garlic, so we may find that we want to take out that green shoot that's in there. I think some people say that's bitter. To avoid burning it, the garlic's going to go in after the onion. My lovely but decidedly weird wood ear mushrooms. I'll run the knife through those and get them into little ribbons, a bit narrower than the pasta. That's about right, I think. The mushroom milk. We have succeeded in making mushroom milkshake here. Definitely the mushrooms have infused and have hydrated, so the mushrooms have gone soft. The milk has gone a kind of very creamy beige colour, which indicates to me that some of the flavour of these mushrooms has infused into the milk, which is exactly what I wanted. I'm now going to drain these out. I'll take those out and drain them, and I'll chop them up, and they're more or less the same size as those pieces anyway, so they can probably go in at the same time. So that milk now, which is infused with mushroom flavour, is going to go in to make my sauce. So I've got a big pan of water boiling at the back there. I'll keep that just on low so that that can be ready for when my pasta needs to be cooked. Then on the front here, in fact, I'm probably going to have to move the water over to there. Now we'll figure it out. In this pan, we're going to have a bit of oil. Okay, so first in, onions. And then also into here, I'm going to shred up this chicken. Just going to shred up. This is already completely cooked, but I think I'll shred it up and get it in here because some fat will come out of this, which is useful for what I'm making the sauce. But also this will give it a little bit of browning, a little bit of flavour. It'll just bring it back to life, basically. Not literally. Let's move that around a little bit. And this is all the dark meat from the thigh and drumstick of the chicken. Dark meat is my favourite for chicken. It's got a lot more flavour to it. Yeah, and just see that starting to take some little browned edges. Garlic. Got to be careful that doesn't burn. Now this might seem weird. Maybe it is weird. But we're going to have a good chunk of butter in there. Like that, maybe. A bit more. And then into that melted butter, a bit of plain flour. So I'm making a roux here, or an approximation of one. Let that fry for a little bit to cook off the flour. And then this is going to have my mushroom milk added in, most of it. We'll just stop short of that last little bit because grit. Bring that together. I've also got some cream. And now the mushrooms go in. And then these are just going to be simmered ever so gently in all of that liquid. It does need a bit more liquid. A bit more milk. Let's make sure we don't get lumps. Okay, and then I need to bring that back up to a simmer. Season, tiny bit of salt in there. But not too much because the next ingredient that goes in is also quite salty. And those mushrooms are just going to gently poach in this sauce as it bubbles. I'm just going to turn that down a bit because I don't want it boiling dry. The kind of last ingredient, I won't add it all at once, is some cheese. Some kind of Italian cheese would probably be better here, but I don't have it. What I have is mature cheddar, so that's what we're using. I won't put all of that in just yet. That's now just going to go onto the back burner and switch places with the big pan because we need to cook the pasta. This water is going to come up to a fierce boil, or as close as I can get to a fierce boil on this cooker, and then my pasta in there. We might have to do this in 2 batches, and that's not going to take long at all because that's fresh egg pasta. That's going to take 2 minutes. Okay, I reckon that's there, and that's going to go straight into my sauce. I'll boil the second lot of pasta in here as well. So I'm not going to worry too much if a little bit of liquid transfers over, because that starchy liquid will just help to make the sauce a bit more velvety. And while it's been simmering over there on the back burner, it will have lost a bit of moisture anyway, so that should work out for the best. And then in with the second little batch. Right, that second batch of pasta is done. Tiny, tiny little splash of that pasta water, just for now. And I'll just toss those things together. Oops. All looking a bit beige at the moment. So, from the garden, my garden is still producing lovely fresh parsley. So I'll have a bit of that in now. So that's chicken and wood ear pasta in a cheesy cream sauce. If this sauce resembles something with a name, then that's what it is. If it doesn't, then it isn't. Okay, let's get that served up and give it a taste. A little bit more cheese, a little bit more green, and let's give that a taste. Dog's crying behind the door because there's chicken. Well, here goes. Now, here's the thing. The wood ear mushrooms are really interesting texture variation from the pasta. When you first put them in your mouth, it's a lot like the pasta, but then when you bite into them, the wood ear mushrooms have got that peculiar gelatinous crispness that's quite difficult to describe. Oh, that mushroom milk, the porcini milk that I made, definitely giving that a really robust mushroom flavour. Happy with that. So that was my foraging attempt in February here in Dorset. I am going to go back out and get some Scarlet Elf Cups. I've got an idea for another place I might be able to find some. So that will be coming in a future episode. Meanwhile, I better go and give Jenny her dinner. So I hope that's been interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.